Coming to you from the Spit Studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, this is the Spit Sports Show. Well, one of the most interestingly uninteresting teams of the last 6 years has become a whole lot more interesting this offseason with the addition of Aaron Rodgers. I'm, of course, talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the news has come out officially that Aaron Rodgers will not play at all in the preseason, which is fair. Aaron Rodgers in a vacuum obviously does not need preseason football. He's one of the all-time greats because he's so smart and he has obviously a wealth of experience that does not need to be enhanced by any preseason games. In 2023, Rodgers took the field for 10 snaps in the Jets' final preseason game, and that's the only preseason game he's played in at all since 2018. And obviously, since 2018, he's won 2 MVPs. He's put up some great seasons, but he also has slipped in recent years, which kind of makes it so I think he probably should be playing at least a quarter or a couple of series in these Pittsburgh preseason games. And it's not just the fact that his play has been declining significantly over the past couple of years. He has an entirely new coaching staff and personnel group around him. Even with the Jets, as much as it sucks to kind of say it, a lot of those were Aaron's guys and people that he brought in, like Alan Lazard and Devontae Adams later. Even the offensive coordinator, Nat Hackett, was a guy that Aaron Rodgers endorsed and practically brought into the Jets building. So these are an entirely new group of folks that he is completely unfamiliar with. But the other thing is, I don't know if it's a good idea to just go into the regular season blind when you have a new connection with a wide receiver and an offensive coordinator. Starting with the wide receiver, obviously, I'm talking about DK Metcalf. The thing about DK, obviously, tremendous football player, one of the most physically imposing receivers in the entire NFL. But if there's one thing that Aaron Rodgers likes to do as a quarterback, it is protect the football. And specifically his touchdown to interception ratio, which, in my opinion, has made it so his teams are a little bit less successful than they should be because of his hesitancy to take risks with the ball. But that's a conversation for another day. The thing about DK Metcalf is he's not the most technically sound receiver. No one has confused DK Metcalf for Devontae Adams in terms of their precise route running, in terms of their releases. So I think it might take Rodgers a little while to be able to establish that connection with Metcalf because a lot of what he does is just kind of out physical people on go balls, jump balls, quick slants, stuff like that. Now, I think that they will be just fine, but a couple of series in an actual live game, I don't think it could hurt. Again, especially because DK isn't the primary archetype of receiver that Rodgers typically works well with. We've seen him in the past with guys like Jordy Nelson, obviously much later Devontae Adams, Greg Jennings. These guys were very, very technical and precise in how they wanted to approach the wide receiver position, where again, DK is more of a physical, just specimen of a player. And with the offensive coordinator connection, I think it's going to be an interesting fit. Now, I don't dislike the fit whatsoever. I think it should work fine. But Arthur Smith runs a very run heavy scheme. Many of his primary principles come from the Mike Shanahan coaching tree, a lot of wide zones, pre snap motion, play action passing, a lot of use of heavy groupings, two tight ends. So, with that coaching tree in mind, it should be pretty similar to the offense that he was running in his later years in Green Bay under Matt LaFleur. Now, when it comes to Arthur Smith, I had my fair share of issues with him in Atlanta when he had a rookie Bijan Robinson. And for some reason, he had this love affair with Tyler Algier, who took all of his goal line carries and really played a lot more percentage of the snaps than he had any right to, considering the talent that Bijan Robinson obviously is. And I had a lot of questions about his use of Kyle Pitts in his time in Atlanta, although I will say his quarterback play did not exactly induce great tight end numbers. He doesn't seem to specifically be a quarterback whisperer. Although, again, it's hard to be a whisperer to a deaf person. He had, I should say, Desmond Ritter, Marcus Mariota, Taylor Heineke in Atlanta. He definitely did not have the single caller that he would have liked. He also is incredibly adaptable when it comes to quarterbacks, Arthur Smith is, it seems. In his first season ever as an offensive coordinator, if you remember, it was in Tennessee when the Titans switched from Marcus Mariota to Ryan Tannehill mid-season. So obviously, Mariota and Tannehill are two incredibly different players. Mariota's a bit more of a running threat. Tannehill's a bit more statuesque. So he had to kind of flip that switch mid-year. And Rodgers so far has praised his offensive coordinator for being incredibly adaptable, which I respect. And he has experience being adaptable. Like I said, the quarterbacks he's had, he went from Mariota to Tannehill. He had Matt Ryan for a little bit. Then he had Mariota again, Desmond Ritter, Taylor Heineke, Justin Fields, and then Russell Wilson. So he's had to play a lot of different styles to adapt to a single caller, which I think is a good thing considering the fact that Rodgers is coming in obviously with having an offensive grouping in mind, offensive plays, an offensive scheme in mind to where he thinks he'll be the most effective. And I think he actually has a very good base to build off of with the Steelers' current personnel. From 2021 to 2023, the Falcons ran the most plays with multiple tight ends on the field. So, with the Steelers having both Pat Freiermuth, who I think is one of the most underrated players in the NFL, not just tight ends, and Jonnu Smith coming in, I think him having experience with those heavy personnel sets with two tight ends is going to be extremely, extremely valuable, especially considering what the Steelers are dealing with on their offensive line currently. Broderick Jones allowed the second most sacks last year, and he is making the full time transition to left tackle when he played right tackle last season. And Troy Fautno, pardon the pronunciation. He has one NFL start under his belt. So finding ways to take pressure off that offensive line is going to be huge. And the quick passing game is obviously the best way to do that. And add with that the addition of Kenneth Gainwell, who is going to be their third down running back, who has experience catching, and he's a very, very good little pass catching receiver. I actually think that will be a good fit for Rodgers trying to get the ball out quickly, especially because at this point in his career, you know he's trying to avoid big hits at all cost. So there are definitely some good things to look at with this Steelers offense. Like I said, DK Metcalf's an awesome player. I think Arthur Smith is adaptable and has a pretty good base to go off of with the Steelers personnel. But I have three big time issues with the Steelers this year. One has to do with their quarterback, one has to do with their personnel, and the last has to do with culture. So I'm going to start with their personnel. People aren't talking enough about how shallow this Steelers receiving room is. There's been a lot of rumors about the Vikings and the 49ers and I think the Jets looking for a wide receiver to trade for. I think the Steelers should be at the top of that list, even over the 49ers, who have obviously been devastated with wide receiver injuries. Outside of DK, who, again, really good player, they have Calvin Austin, who has played 2 seasons with the Steelers and has 730 yards combined. Robert Woods, who's 33 years old, and when he was in his prime, was probably more of a wide receiver 2 or 3 than a wide receiver 1. And their third wide receiver, or fourth, I should say, is Tampa Bay Buccaneers legend Scotty Miller, who had an incredible go ball against Green Bay in the NFC Championship before the half. and was one of Tom Brady's favorite targets during that Super Bowl run, but since then has really just kind of fluctuated around the NFL, hasn't been able to maintain a starting position. So that's a questionable wide receiver core, especially for a guy in Rodgers who last year, despite all of the Jets' dysfunction, did have Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson out wide for over half of the season. And the Jets also had Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. The running backs for the Steelers are Jalen Warren, who's a good player. He's all right. Caleb Johnson, who's just really a complete unknown. We haven't seen much of him. And the previously mentioned Kenneth Gainwell, who is a receiving running back. He's not a guy who's going to total a lot of carries. So, in terms of your skill positions, I would say the Steelers are near like the 23rd best group in the NFL. Like, that is really, really shallow. And to tell you the truth, the top end talent, especially at the running back position, isn't there either. So, having those kind of skill position players around an old Aaron Rodgers with, again, as previously mentioned, an O-line very, very shaky, I just don't see how this offense is going to be very proficient. And I know that's blunt, but if you look at the personnel and what Rodgers has dealt with in his previous years when he also hasn't been all of that good, it just doesn't add up to me to be even like a top half offense in the NFL. I think it's going to be around the 23rd best offense. Now, the defense will be good because it always is. It's always good under Tomlin. TJ Watt's still there. Cam Hayward ended his hold in. He's fully participating at practice now. But the defense being good to great, again, with the offensive personnel that they have, I don't think will be enough. I think they'll have to be all-time unbelievable, and I just don't see that. They obviously acquired Jalen Ramsey, which is cool, but I don't know how much gas he has left in the tank at this point. Their pass rush is going to be solid, but like I said, I don't see number one defense in the NFL, which I think is kind of what the Steelers are going to need to do if they want to put together an 11 to 12 win season, which definitely is what Rodgers has in mind, as this is probably his last year, if not his second to last, you would think. But speaking of Aaron Rodgers, the biggest issue that I have with the Steelers this year is I don't think Aaron Rodgers is very good at football anymore. Now, I have a million different stats and analytics and trends to prove this, but I'm just going to throw two at you. He hasn't had over 300 yards in a regulation game since December 12th of 2021. Now, I couldn't believe that when I looked it up either. That is 1,347 days ago. Think back to what you were doing on December 12th of 2021. Yeah, I don't remember either. I was definitely still in high school and probably studying a physics test or I don't remember. It was a long time ago. Long, long time ago. And 300 yards in today's passing NFL really should not be that difficult to obtain at least once in the past 4 years. Now, the second thing that I want to throw at you is not a stat whatsoever, but it's just a recap of how this last year went for the Jets, because the Jets were primarily his creation. I know that they had a roster that was pretty good before he got there, but he came in as the savior of the franchise. He was talking about how that Lombardi trophy is looking lonely in his opening press conference. And he brought in all of his guys. Like I mentioned before, he brought in Alan Lazard. He brought in Nat Hackett. He brought in Devontae Adams later in the season. And the Jets ended up finishing 5-12, primarily due to his bad play. Don't believe me? I know that his numbers look pretty good at the end of the season. But let's just go through it. They started off 2-1. They had wins against the Titans, who ended up getting the first overall pick, and the Patriots, who got the second overall pick. So they started off 2-1 with 2 wins against literally the 2 worst teams in the NFL. And then from there, this is just the on the field performance. This does not include the snarky comments that he made after all of these losses, the finger pointing that he did. This is just on the field. So he goes from 2-1 to he scores 9 points against the Denver Broncos. He then scores 17 points versus Minnesota. He threw 3 picks and 54 passes in that game and couldn't get over 250 yards. He threw 54 passes and couldn't get over 250 yards. That's really, really bad. And the 3 picks is just the icing on the cake. After that game, they fire poor Robert Saleh, who just got thrown under the bus for all of this because God knows it couldn't be Aaron Rodgers' fault. Next game, 20 points versus the Buffalo Bills, where both his stats and the amount of points the Jets scored were inflated drastically due to a Hail Mary that was completed at the end of the first half, within reach the whole time they were of the Buffalo Bills. That game was right on the edge, and Rodgers mustered up 3 points in the second half, and they lost the game. After that, as if they couldn't appease Aaron Rodgers enough, they trade for Devontae Adams, his guy. He mentions him as the best or second best player he's ever played with, him and Charles Woodson. They bring him in. The next week, they score 15 points against the Steelers, 2 interceptions thrown by Rodgers. The next week, a horrific loss to, again, a 4-win New England team who ended up getting the second overall pick that year. He then played his best game of the stretch. He actually turned the page a little bit, played a really good game against the Houston Texans, who at that point were reeling from injuries, but that's not Aaron Rodgers' fault. 3 touchdowns, no picks, played great. Couldn't continue the momentum, though, because the next week he got crushed by the Arizona Cardinals, who were the most mid team in the NFL last year. 31-6 was the final score there. He threw for 150 yards, played like garbage. The next week, he got walked down, came back on, and outplayed by Anthony Richardson. New York didn't get a first down until its 6th offensive possession. He threw for 184 yards that game. And then the next week, top it off with a pick 6 in a 26-21 loss versus Seattle, where 7 of those points that you scored came off a kickoff return, and you're 3-9 and your season is over. So I understand at the last part of the year he started playing better when the games were meaningless, but when the Jets' season was in the balance, if you actually go game by game and look at the play script and what he was doing in those games, he was awful. He was very, very bad. And like I said, he hasn't been good since his MVP season in 2020. Definitely not Aaron Rodgers. And the other thing with Aaron Rodgers, and this goes into the culture point that I was scared of, I question if the Steelers' standard, I'll use the Mike Tomlin word, is enough for Rodgers' very aspirational personality. I think after a loss where the Steelers are like 2-2, I could absolutely see Rodgers coming out to the media and saying something along the lines of, we can't accept what is happening here. We have to strive for more. Whereas Tomlin's going to say, we're right on track. Defense is where it's supposed to be. We just got to clean some stuff up. I feel like Tomlin will be content with another 8-9 kind of season because it seems like he always is. And I'm a Mike Tomlin fan, but I think his time in Pittsburgh is a bit overdue at this point. But again, conversation for another day. I don't think Aaron will be okay with that. Again, this is his last year or second to last year. I think it's his last one. Do you think he's going to be okay just going out 8-9, 9-8, and missing the playoffs or getting smoked in the first round? Like, I don't know. I don't think so. Especially because when the competitive juices start flowing for Aaron Rodgers and it doesn't go the way that he expects it to go, he turns into a big time finger pointer and blame deflector. And I don't think that's going to work with the Steelers culture. And I don't think Aaron's going to change because why would he at this point? He's 41. And I know the Steelers aren't going to change because that's what it's been since Tomlin got there. So I question if those two personalities, Mike Tomlin's culture and Aaron Rodgers' flashiness, I guess I'll use the word to be polite, I don't know if it'll work. So I have a lot of questions about the Steelers this year. I have them winning around 8 to 9 games, as they always do. I know it's not a sexy pick, but I could also see them dropping to like 7-6 if that O-line has the issues that, to tell you the truth, a lot of people expect them to have. Thank you all so much for watching as always. I want to know, what do you guys think Aaron Rodgers is going to do this season with the Steelers? How many wins are the Steelers going to get? How many yards is he going to throw for, et cetera, et cetera? I am small enough as to where I can read all comments and love doing so, so drop something down there. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed what you heard. Please subscribe if you really enjoyed the Spit Sports Show. Just hit over 400 subscribers. Big things happening on this channel. And as always, I'll see you all in. Peace out. Love you guys.